Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by April Collins.
Hello.
And John McKenna.
Hi, everybody!
Okay. Wow. All right. I just want to apologize to all our listeners right now. I know that that sound you heard must not have been pleasant. I'll make sure to edit down the volume of that little segment for you.
Boo.
You're welcome.
Every metalhead listening to this will
You
be like,
are
"What's wrong with that?"
very, very welcome. I will embrace all the love your earbuds will give to me. So yeah, as you can probably tell from that lovely introduction John made, this episode is going to be discussing the Netflix anime Aggretsuko, which at the time of this recording was released about a month ago. Aggretsuko is a show centered around Retsuko, a character from the Sanrio family, Sanrio being the company behind Hello Kitty and Gudetama. Retsuko is a red panda who has a typical office job, and the way she deals with the stresses and banalities of her work life is by secretly singing heavy death metal songs. If you haven't watched the show, I'm warning you now that this is a spoiler podcast. The show is only 10 episodes. Each of them is about 15 minutes long. It's not super time consuming to watch, so go watch it and then come back to listen to this. Find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, where we appreciate your star ratings. Or watch for Overly Animated on your favorite podcatcher. Okay, so first I wanted to ask how you guys watched this show. Did you watch the dub or the sub? Did you binge it or take more time with it?
So I watched it subbed. I watched it twice. And the first time I sort of just kind of like casually watched it. Like maybe I'd watch like an episode like here or there, like before I went to bed or something like that. And like, I enjoyed watching it that way. It wasn't like too terrible. And then the second time I watched it, like I hardcore binged it, and it really like is not hard to do in like a single day because the episodes are just super short. So, but both times I watched it subbed because I typically don't like dubbed anime. I would rather like listen to it in like the way that it was made to be like listened to, I guess. So.
Gotcha. John, how about you?
I take the opposite view. I watched them twice, and I did it both on the dub side. Mainly just because for me, when I'm watching anime, I prefer the dub just because I'm not really so much a fan of like hearing a language that I really don't understand and then trying to read it, especially when it's something like Netflix that usually does a pretty decent job at dubbing it so that it's both a good translation and they sort of make it an easier listening for English speakers. Because sometimes I just know like Japanese does some like clever wordplay games and stuff that don't translate that well. So I generally prefer the dub just in case the sub's like too direct. I started watching it on a Sunday afternoon because like the weekend it came out, because it was one of those moments where I saw the title because they heavily advertised it on Facebook. They said it's like, she's like a Disney princess, except she sings death metal karaoke. I'm like, okay, go on. So I watched the promo. I'm like, okay, this looks awesome. I'll watch maybe 2 episodes Sunday. I see 2 episodes and I just decided to watch the whole season right then and there.
Awesome. And you watched it twice, right?
Yes, I watched it first run through. I thought I was going to watch this maybe 4, take a break, maybe come back to the next day. I just watched the whole thing because it was just so engrossing. And then I watched it again this weekend because I knew about this. Again, dubbed, same thing. Mainly just to pick up on anything I missed when I was watching it casually.
Gotcha. Well, I watched it once, so you guys are going to probably be more clear on certain details than I am. And I watched it sub for the same reasons April did. I also spent years learning Japanese, and whenever I watch anime, it's always a great opportunity to get back into it, and it acts as a way for me to not forget a language that I spent years learning. And yeah, I started binging it, and I think that was a mistake. This is kind of a slice of life show. I think it's safe to say it's not super, super plot heavy. You can kind of pick any random episode and you can kind of figure out what you can kind of not get lost in the show. So as I was binging it, there came this little lull in the middle that I just it changed. Suddenly the show stopped being enjoying and seemed more like a chore to finish. So I kind of stopped watching it for a bit and then got back into it and started finishing it up through another binge. So I kind of split it into 2 binges. And yeah, there was just this one moment that didn't really work. But by the end, once I realized what the show was trying to do, I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, Aggretsuko is essentially a show about a young woman coming to terms with reality and the life that has been dealt to her. And it's also deceptively simple. You know, she's from the same family as Hello Kitty. So you would think this type of show would be very superficial, very optimistic, and not very heavy, but it actually deals with a lot of things that, especially in anime, aren't often seen through the female perspective. So I'm curious to find out what your opinions are, not just of the show, but of Aggretsuko in particular. I wanted to start with Aggretsuko, you know, as a character and as the protagonist of this show. Sure, it's not a super long show, but do you think that her character was able to carry this show successfully? Did she work not just as a character, but as the protagonist of Aggretsuko?
I think she was very successful as a character and very successful as a protagonist I think she was kind of like half a blank slate almost. Like, she definitely had her own personality, she had her own quirks, but because of that sort of half blank slateness, you were almost able to insert yourself into her character as well. You were sort of with her through all these sort of like mundane moments, and you could relate so easily to her. And you could see her through her relationships with her coworkers, through relationships with her superiors, even her relationship with Risasuke. You could kind of, even if you're not a woman, and I'm not, I could say like, oh wow, I've been in that situation before. I've been that awkward. I've had, you know, bosses like that have been jackasses at most. Like, it really, she succeeded in that way. You were able to really get yourself immersed into what she was going through, and it was sort of a cute personality, and also she had this secret. But again, you know, we keep secrets from our friends all the time. There's stuff that's just ours. We don't want to share it because it's, you know, it's our thing. It's our unique identity. So in that way, I think she was very successful as a character, and I really enjoyed watching her.
Yeah, I agree. I think she was very successful. And I think a lot of the success comes from the fact that she is so relatable. Like, almost immediately in the first episode, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I feel you and all of your struggles. Like, and I think that's like what helped keep me like watching, even because I do kind of agree, like, in the middle, especially if you binge the show, there's kind of like a small lull, and I had to like sort of stop and go do something else and then come back. But I think like that's what kind of keeps you like intrigued, is like, okay, how is she going to handle this? And it's funny too, because a lot of like her reactions to things are like exactly like what normal people would do. And it's just kind of, I guess, sort of surreal to see that like in an anime, you know, much, you know, even more so because it comes from Sanrio, and everything is supposed to be all like happy and cute and, you know, all of this stuff. But it's like, no, this is real and this is very raw. Like, and especially like you see that like with her relationships with her coworkers, especially like with her boss, like, oh goodness, her boss, but
a literal chauvinist pig.
Exactly, which made me like, I died, but like I think she carries the show just so well, just in and of herself. Like, it's not so much that she's just so much of a blank slate that makes her relatable. It's because she does have like her personality and her secrets, and like even like the fact that like she has like her secret office friends and stuff like that. Like, it's great, and it's kind of refreshing to see in a show, like, for it to be so like for it to be so much so that I like find myself in like not just like the main character, but a lot of the other characters as well.
Gotcha. You know, I think I'm gonna take a bit of a counter stance to you guys. I agree with what you guys say. She's definitely a very sympathetic character, but I personally found the blandness of her character to be quite frustrating. I'm someone who very much strongly believes in specificity being what really gets people to relate to one another. Just like, it's the closer you get to how specific someone is, the more you're willing to sympathize with them. And I just felt that there were just certain elements to Retsuko's character that just weren't that, they were just too broad. They were too bland. I didn't quite understand why, for instance, like when she with her friend, when her friend talks about, oh, I think I'm going to start up this website or whatever, and she gets this opportunity to quit her job, she very much just started romanticizing that and thinking, oh, well, this is my way out. This is how I'm going to quit and get a better life for myself. And I just couldn't quite understand, like, if you're so miserable at your job, why did you think it was gonna, like, I don't know. I feel like I wanted a bit more of her motivations in terms of, like, why did you decide to do accounting then? Like, did you think if you move to a different job, do you think that that's gonna, like, change anything? Like, I don't know. I kind of wanted a bit more into, like, why she decided to continue on with this life, and why she decided to study this thing in the first place. Like, it's never really shown that she enjoys her job, and I just found that really interesting, and I kind of wanted to get deeper into that. Like, is it the work? Like, is like, she's never seen and enjoying her work. So I was just very interested into seeing, like, is it because, like, not only does she not have a very good work environment, but she also doesn't like the job that she's doing, and that's not enough? Or, like, I don't know. I'm very curious. I just wanted a little bit more of her, and more exploration about, like, what her actual goals and dreams were. Not just so much like, oh, I dream about, like, getting married one day, or I dream about, like, I don't know, eventually we'll get to, like, the rich husband. No, I actually wanted more of, like, okay, even if it's, like, simply, like, oh, I want to aim to be the boss one day. Even if it's something simple like that. Like, I wanted more motivation from her, and instead we got kind of this very bland kind of stance where she doesn't quite know what she wants, and I guess that's kind of reflective, but I kind of wanted a little bit more of why she decided to study this in the first place. Because I guess in my head, as someone who, from the outside looking inside out the world of accounting, I feel like, it's pretty easy to see, like, what it is that you're going to get in terms of this kind of work experience.
I think it depends on the work environment. I think the focus of the show is more so her work environment, not so much as, like, her being an accountant, because she has, like, all of these, like, very stressful coworkers. And, it's not to say that, okay, every workplace is going to have, like, coworkers who drive you crazy, but, like, hers are more so, like, I mean, she has the very, like, chauvinistic boss who, like, is extremely sexist. And then she has, like, higher ups who think it's okay to, like, take advantage of people who, work underneath, not even work underneath them, but who are just not as, like, senior in the company. She's kind of bullied throughout the day. And I think that at least in her head, she's thinking that if I could not be here, then that would be better. Kind of like, because again, I never got the feel that she didn't like accounting. And so it's just one of those things where, like, if you're not in a, like, bad environment, then you can enjoy your work, even if it is a mundane thing like accounting or whatever. I don't think that matters. I think it's the fact that she just doesn't want to work for that company anymore.
Yeah, she just it's a case of, like, oh, by the way, she just happens to be in the accounting department. I think we're reading a little too much in why she's an accountant.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I am sympathetic towards her. I just was like, well, what can I do to make you happy? Like, what can we change so that you can actually start enjoying your work life that much more? I don't know. I'm probably in the minority, but yeah, let's continue. And let's focus on these wonderful, lovely coworkers that Retsuko has to deal with on a daily basis. Let's just talk about the, not elephant, but pig in the room. Have you guys seen such an overt portrayal of misogynism and misogyny in the workplace in any other anime? Because that to me was what was so refreshing about this entire exploration of Retsuko's relationship with her boss, was that it was so overtly about his mistreatment of her and his mistreatment of her because she was a woman, and him taking advantage of being allowed to do that, given how society is. Were you guys surprised?
A little bit, and I really enjoyed it, like, honestly. Like, I just think it's, like, because, again, it plays into, like, the very realness of, like, the show, even though, like, and I think the fact that it came from, like, a Sanrio, like, character story, that it, like, made it even better. I, like, not that it was great, but you know what I mean? Like, it just, like, really, like, sort of drew the attention to it, because Sanrio's meant to, like, be happy and, like, Hello Kitty and, sunshine. And then, like, we have Director Tan, who is the worst person ever in the world. Like, and it's almost, like, assaulting, but in a good way.
You guys don't think that they're making merchandise of Tan, do you? Like, hey, buy a backpack of this guy. He's a misogynist.
I want one.
Buy a Funko Pop of Tan.
I want it.
I mean, if he were like a punching bag or a punching pillow, then maybe, but yeah, that's exactly a stress ball. Exactly. But yeah, John, what do you think? How do you think they dealt with this relationship?
I have my anime library is unfortunately very limited, so I can't remember the last time I saw a slice of life anime that wasn't this, which I guess which means I must go watch more anime. I was very surprised just how on the nose it was, but I think that served the show very well to help illustrate what she's like going through, and the fact she has to almost like sit there, be quiet, and like just deal with it, which is in itself kind of tragic, because it's like, crap, I can't really speak out to the boss, because if I do and someone does on her behalf and it comes back to her, because I guess anonymity in human resources is not really a thing, her life becomes that much harder. And I can imagine that in some places, and if you work at the wrong place, that is a very real risk, and especially for a lot of people, particularly women.
The Me Too movement and everything that kind of came after. It really just once again brings into light this kind of faultiness of HR, and how it's very rare to see one that actually works.
It's as much about covering the company's ass,
I guess, than it is for me. And John, you kind of alluded to this earlier. For me, and I'm about to get really corny here, but what really kind of was the highlight for me about this whole thing was that you really get to see the importance of women supporting women in the workspace, and of women being in higher places of power, because, you have Gori and Washimi, like, offering Retsuko not just this relationship to express her problems and her doubts, but you have them actually, like, using their influence to protect Retsuko from this very harmful environment. And I just found that to be so heartwarming and so positive to see. And that's just, again, something you don't often see, heck, even in any form of entertainment and media. And the fact that we're getting it in an anime, which rarely focuses on this type of stuff, I just think it's quite incredible. And side note, she befriends Washimi and Gori outside of work. Like, I think that's a really important distinction to make. She makes friends with them beyond the workspace, and it really shows a distinction between how she treats them and how she treats her work friends. I mean, do you guys think that's fair to say? Do you think that there is like a difference between the relationship she has built with Gori and Washimi, given that was built outside of work, to that of the people she meets, like Finical and like inside work? Like, do you think like there is a distinction? I mean, not that her work friends aren't supportive, but they aren't providing her the same emotional support that Gori and Washimi have.
Actually, that's pretty accurate as well. Because I think when they're in the workplace, it seemed like it was a very stratified workplace. It's like, oh my God, these are the directors and the secretaries and all that. And you look up to them thinking like, oh wow, I want to be that one day. But then, but even in the workplace, you see Gori and Washimi. By the way, Washimi's design, loved it.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like even like it worked. They almost like and they mentioned it's like you're putting on a mask. Like they look confident. They're walking. They have that sort of tough woman walk or whatever it was they called it. But then when you see like how they're away from everybody, like, oh God, this is really hard to keep doing. So it was nice to see. But outside, it was more a case of, that's a chance to be friendly. And it was a great, and that sort of the stratosphere kind of like melts away. And they had this great relation, which I thought was really, really cool. Just how they're able to like sort of, it wasn't really sort of a condescending relationship. It was just a nice, helpful relationship. And I know you mentioned how it's like women helping women, but outside of work, I've had that with my superiors as well. I mean, I was invited to go to a bar with my superior at one point in the past. So it does help that, outside of like in work, there's your role, but outside of work, you're just normal people.
I also think there's a big difference between it shows how you make friends. Like it reflects in the relationship. Like she made like her work friends like at work. Like she met Fineko at work. She met Haida at work. Like, so that kind of like almost puts like that barrier, especially like if you don't enjoy your workplace, like that it's kind of like you almost only bonded over like a terrible experience kind of thing. And so like, I think it shows a lot that she like met Washimi and Gori outside of work and became friends with them outside of work. But I think it's also very sweet how like, they would like walk past each other, in the workplace often. And like Gori has that moment where she's like, I was really hoping we would see her again today. Like, like you're not even friends. Like, what is this? Like, But I think that like is almost like a testament too, because even her like Fineko and Haida didn't know that she was like, the metal princess, but because she was able to sort of have that like opening, like there wasn't like that work sort of barrier between her and Washimi and Gori, that they were able to build sort of a stronger friendship, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, there's this really interesting kind of theme going on, which about masks and about this facade that people place on themselves, like their public image versus how they actually really internally feel. I mean, you see that with Washimi and Gori, I think, as John kind of mentioned briefly earlier, about how, they have this kind of image of goddesses. These women, they're just so powerful and put together. And yet they have that moment where when they're alone together, they complain about their back because of their posture and about these shoes. And, they kind of remove it for each other. And it kind of shows how close them two are with one another to be able to show their true selves. And continuing that trend, when Retsuko shows them her side, when she finally decides to sing truly how she sings in front of them, it kind of breaks that barrier between them, and it shows once again like that, they kind of take their masks off. Retsuko took her mask off for them, and it shows that their relationship is much closer because of it. Their friendships are just much tighter because of it. And I think every character goes through a moment where they remove this kind of public facade that they have, this mask that they've created because society has forced them to create this adult mask. And I don't know, I just find it really, really kind of beautiful how this show that, again, it doesn't look like it's going to be a show that's going to tell you like a very deep, meaningful thing, but it does so by telling you that, hey, maybe by removing this mask, you actually show your true self to someone, you're able to break down these societal barriers that are created for you. I mean, and everyone goes through it. Fineko goes through it when she goes to on the dating like date mingle thingy, and she like first she admits that she thinks that she doesn't want to do it, and she continues this kind of facade of being someone who just who has a monotonous voice and doesn't care about anything, and then she admits that she does like it, and then suddenly she's able to connect. And then, with when Haida, when he admits his feelings to Retsuko at the end, again, that's another person taking their mask off. There's just a lot of moments where each character kind of has that moment, that reveal, and again, visually, that's not what you expect from the show, but that's what it's giving you. So it's a very interesting kind of mental exercise in a way. But let's move on from this and move to another part of the show that tackles not Retsuko's work life, but her social life, which for Retsuko means her romantic life. She kind of goes through this thing where she kind of rationalizes that a way to escape this traumatic work experience, she should just, marry a very rich man and become a housewife. And from that, we get Retsuko going in being shown in an actual relationship. She gets a boyfriend, Resatsuke, and she, it's interesting how this relationship very much mirrors her work life, because she kind of romanticizes about it. And eventually that romantic idea she has of this relationship, similar to this kind of work life that she envisioned for herself, is broken, and she has to realize and has to maneuver her way through this kind of realization that this isn't how her ideal way, this wasn't going to go the ideal way she thought it would go. And I just found that this last bit of a story arc, this last little burst, because it happens in like the final 3 episodes, I was just curious about how you guys think this kind of was dealt with, how this was executed, and what'd you think of her, and what'd you think of this relationship, and of Sasuke?
I thought it was very interesting. Well, first off, I was very frustrated with, because the out-of-pocket prince is like,
or space cadet.
Yeah, he's a space cadet, and like he just looks so dumb and he acts so dumb, and like I think it was very interesting because they talked about like romantic relationships and love, like Retsuko and Gori and Washimi. They sort of talked about relationships, and like they were like, yeah, they can be really great, but they can be a lot of work, and like if it's so much work, like if you're putting in work, like you better be able to keep it up, because otherwise like you're just gonna like essentially die from the like the stress of like just putting up with the relationship. And like I think it spoke a lot to like sort of like not settling kind of, I don't know, at least that's what it said to me, especially like how you can sit there and ignore like bad things that are happening to you, but that doesn't mean that they're not happening to you. And so I think that was very, very like frustrating for me, like outside of like the out-of-pocket prince, because I can't remember his name. I just only ever thought of him as that out-of-pocket prince.
Rasasuke.
Oh, I'll still forget that.
So do you remember that guy from Naruto? It's that name, but with an RE at the front. That's how I remember it.
That's a good way to remember it. But yeah, I kind of liked that, because it's funny how she thought that like just being in a relationship would sort of fix everything for her almost, or like she's like, I'm happy, I'm in a relationship, but at the same time she's like sort of sing-songing like, oh yeah, and he sniffs his fingernails, and that's kind of weird, but I love it. And I was like, what? No, like, what are you doing? So I thought that was kind of like slightly empowering too, given like what else was going on. Like, she's in like a terrible work situation. Now she's in a terrible relationship. She doesn't even realize it. It's like, why don't you come to terms with the fact that this relationship sucks and you were literally getting nothing out of it? Like,
right. Going on that point, it's sort of, I think she sort of realized that she wasn't so much in love with with her boyfriend. It was more that she was in love with the idea of having a boyfriend, and it was sort of, and here's a weird thing. I actually really liked Rasasuke as a character because of just how totally like out there he was the whole time. Like he's just sort of like, he was dragged. I almost wanted more backstory on him because he was dragged to the singles night as well. He constantly walks around with his head in the clouds. He does nothing but drink canned coffee, which sounds absolutely disgusting. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't want to say he was like an awful boyfriend. I think he probably didn't even realize he was a boyfriend. He was probably that far out there. He was probably like, okay, I'll go out with this girl. Oh, she wants to go shopping? Sure. She wants to go to the amusement park? All right. Oh, she's cold. That sucks. Like, he's probably like, it was so, I mean, I did feel sorry for Retsuko a lot, though, because you knew she was like trying really hard to ignore it. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, you're murdering your feet. He's clearly like, he's almost there he's almost at the shopping store under protest, which is me whenever I go shopping with anybody. So yeah, I mean, I felt bad for her because like, you want it so bad, you're not realizing this guy really just might not be that into you.
Isn't that a movie?
He's just not that into you.
Pick rom-com. It's probably that.
I mean, it's true. You do see that with, just with very visually, just with his face, she makes this, whenever for a good chunk of the relationship, his face would change from that kind of expressionless face that we know and love of his, and it becomes this kind of like what's his name?
Smolder.
From those romance novels, Fabio.
Yes.
Fabio, yes. He makes the Fabio face, as I like to call it. And it stays that way until finally that kind of idea of him breaks. And it's only once that breaks that we see it very visually this kind of face fade away and his true face show. And that's when she decides, oh, I can't do this anymore. And I'm curious, what did you guys think of that last shot of Sasuke? After we kind of stay with him, and then instead of going with Retsuko, we stay with him, and then we enter his house.
He goes in and there's all of the plants.
All these plants. It's just a bunch of plants. And I don't remember if he says something.
He says, I'm home.
I'm home. Or I'm back.
Yes.
I'm back or something.
Tadaima. So what did you guys think of like that moment and how it was, it was just, I don't know, I just found it to be very interesting. I felt a lot of emotions when I saw it. So I'm just curious about what you guys felt once you saw it.
Maybe that's just like his way of like coping or something. Like
maybe it was a case of like, as much pressure Retsuko put on herself to find a man, he probably put a lot of pressure on himself to find a woman too. That's the sort of vibe I got. And he was overly romanticizing her, and he had to come to realize, okay, maybe she's not the one for me. And then he returned to being like himself almost.
I was gonna say, like the first time that I watched it, I almost kind of got like this, like sort of, like I was really sad watching that scene, because the first time that I saw it, I sort of interpreted it as like he was totally unaffected by the relationship, like just because he's so like blank faced and like everything like that, and so then like he just goes home and it's like nothing, like his life was not impacted in any way, shape, or form. And it made me so sad. And I was so angry because I was just like, you were in a relationship with an amazing woman and you didn't even realize it. Like, you just threw it all down the toilet. So
not everyone's into death metal. As sad as that is.
I mean, he was kind of supportive, but he wasn't like as supportive as like, was she being gory where, and I think that's what like she was wanting. She was wanting like him to be like, oh wow, like you're amazing and everything like that. And she didn't get that from him. And then like he was just like, oh yeah, I'm just here, you can sing. And then she was just like, I'm done, like bye. And I would have been too.
I feel like she was just looking for a reaction. I don't even think she needed the, oh God, you're amazing. I think if he had given her a slightly negative reaction to it, she would have taken it, because at least it was something instead of just him just being expressionless.
Yeah. Well, and she was essentially like bearing a piece of her soul to him. You know what I mean? Like, because.
Yeah. And he was just unresponsive.
Exactly. Like,
he sets a record for the most unresponsive a person can be that's had 4 cups of canned coffee.
Right? How is he not jumping through the walls?
That's either that's weak as hell coffee, or he's been so numb to it that he almost needs like a shot of cocaine to get him going.
Okay, I have a theory. Stick with me. I hope it makes sense. So I think that Sasuke is, or at least he represents, the Sanrio character of old. The one who always expresses their face the same way. There's same cute character concept. And it's just kind of, superficial. There's nothing there. And I think that, I don't know, I think that maybe he represents, the character that, offers you comfort, sure, makes you feel better about yourself, but maybe just doesn't provide that kind of extra sort of, that extra kind of indicator that I don't know, it's a very one-way relationship. You seek something from him, but he never gives anything to you because he is not alive. He isn't a person, he isn't a thing, he doesn't actually provide you some form of a relationship. It isn't a back and forth, it's just you projecting your idea onto this faceless character. And, I think that maybe perhaps, because we've seen this kind of change in Sanrio characters. At first they were known for Hello Kitty, but even with Gudetama, which is this kind of egg yolk of a character, they're always laying down, right? They're always, they're always on, they're always so tired to move, they're always resting, they never want to go anywhere, and that's not necessarily the optimistic, happy-go-lucky image that, say, someone like Hello Kitty has. Gudetama is much more, has a subtler kind of more, kind of insight into how exhausted people are because of life and society and expectations and whatnot. And that's like a much darker thing. It shows in Gudetama's popularity that, people are connecting with that kind of exhaustion, and I feel like similarly, Aggretsuko is offering this kind of different kind of take of these characters and of these kind of characters that, you have in your, as a pencil case or whatever. And, she's kind of acts as a counter to Sasuke and is in a way critiquing him. And his inability to connect with her is kind of in a way the inability of these kind of expressionless characters to be able to connect with people before. And now we're kind of seeing the shift into characters who actually have who are actually showing these kind of human qualities and actually do give you a personality and aren't so bland. And it's not just that you can project yourself onto them. They're actually offering you something more than just an expressionless face, because in a way that's what we need. And I think that's kind of this interesting sort of juxtaposition we have between Sasuke and Retsuko. I don't know. I could be wrong, but, or not, whatnot. This is just like a theory or a way of reading into this, but, I don't know. Maybe it is a critique and an insight into commentary rather than of this kind of shift in Sanrio.
It's like looking in a mirror, kind of. It's like a reflection of the real world, and they're just doing it through adorable animation.
And not just that, but he's also very much the mirror image of Retsuko. He's also a red panda, so it's kind of like he is what Retsuko would have been like, say, 20, 30 years ago. Anyway, that was my theory, interpretation, reading, whatever.
It's not a bad theory. It's not a bad theory to put out there. I don't know a lot about Sanrio beyond Hello Kitty and obviously this, but yeah, I mean, I could totally buy into that.
I'm into it.
Let us know if you agree on our Discord. That's my way of plugging our Discord. It's a lot of fun, and you get to talk to us directly and much more quickly than us having to read your comments. So join us. It's pretty great. But is there any other characters or moments or themes that you guys want to talk about? Like, for instance, is there any character in particular that stood out to you that if you had to pick like a character, you're just like, yes, this is the one I want to buy all the merchandise for?
Gori and Washimi.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
I would pick Feneko. Feneko might have been my favorite character this whole show.
I laughed really hard because, what was it? One of my friends who was also watching it, she's like, April, you're totally Feneko. And I was like, what? And I like the first time I watched it, I was like, what? I am not like Feneko. And then the second time I was like, okay, I can kind of see it. Like,
it's like everything she did was so funny. I couldn't help, like, she's the kind of person that if you know in real life, like, the last thing you would ever want to do is piss her off, because she will essentially cyberstalk you. And I think, what was it? She was going through Tsunoda's social media profile, and I almost want that to be a kind of, like, someone should put that to a beat. Selfie, dessert, latte art. Selfie, dessert, latte art.
They did put it to a beat.
Please tell me someone did that. But I thought, like, she was just very monotone the whole time. And her laugh was so flair. She's just like, I'm like, oh my god, she is like great. She was great. I really loved her. I know people like that. And she just like that straight monotone voice, the voice of reason, that real shockingly dark edge, just to like scare people. It was just hilarious. It's like, where's Feneko? She might have just jumped off the top of the office building. Why would you say that?
Okay, so last question. Do you guys think that this show should have used anthropomorphic animals? Do you think that Aggretsuko would have been more powerful or more interesting had they used humans instead of these cute Sanrio characters?
I do, actually. Like, I just feel like if it had been more like, if it had been like humans or something else, like something along those lines, then I probably wouldn't have watched it, if I'm completely honest. And I think that whenever it shows sort of do, because it's almost too real, you know what I mean? And so I think whenever shows are almost too real, they have to sort of balance it out with something else, like either a lot of like dry humor or something along those lines. Like take shows like BoJack Horseman, for example. It has a mix of humans and like anamorphic characters. And so, and I think that's why that show is successful, in the fact that it is so real, but there's also a lot of humor in it to sort of balance it out. And I think that if it was just like straight humans, then it would almost be too much and people wouldn't enjoy it. And so I like that it's like a whole cast of like animals, and then the fact that it's also like Sanrio sort of adds to it, because it's like, look at this sunshine, again, they're sunshine go lucky, and so in here they are giving you exactly what you live every single day of your life, but yet like you're finding joy and humor in it almost. So
yeah, I agree, because if it was just straight human, I think it was just a straight human characters, it wouldn't stand out from the scores of other anime slice of life that exist on the internet and elsewhere. It would just be another one to the pile. I think the fact that when I mentioned at the beginning, like the lead in for it would not have been as good as if it was a human, because you see the picture, it's like it's a small, cute little red panda thing. And then you see the description. She likes a Disney princess. I'm like, okay, what is this going to be about? Except she likes death metal karaoke. Wait, I'm sorry, what? Hold on. And then you see it, and it's like the lead is like this, just, it's like she's cute, but she also growls music. I'm like, what is going on here? I don't know what it is, but I feel like I need to see this right now. And then you build, and then it just builds on that, just layers and layers and layers. And it was surprisingly deep. And I don't think it would have gotten to that point had it not had such this out there, very cute, bright lead in. And I think it just worked fantastically.
And legit final question. John, I know that you listen to death metal. Yeah. April, I'm assuming you don't?
No.
My growl in the beginning may have given that away.
Right. So, John, what's your take on Aggretsuko singing and her performing? I know that you saw the dub, and I'm assuming the dub and the sub are different. So how was that like, as someone who knows the genre well?
I really liked the guy they got to do her singing. It's Jameson Bowes, who is actually from a death metal band, Modern Weapons, which is a very good death metal band. I listened to them. I think I listened to them a little bit when I was 17, earlier. So yeah, they are very good. I liked the music. It brought back so many nostalgic memories from when I was a long-haired kid wearing all black, and I would just listen to any kind of metal I could get my hands on. And yes, like, this is my child. Before I watched Steven Universe at Adventure Time, I listened to Opeth, Amona Marith, Joe Satriani, Cannibal Corpse, and I go mosh pit with my friends when I see their bands, which are usually of the metal variety as well. I thought the music was really good, and I do kind of get how that would be such a great outlet to express yourself, because it's very guttural. It's a very sort of ragey sound, but it is beautiful. Like, if you listen to enough really good death metal, it has this great quality to it. It's very composed. It's chaotic, but it's symphonic at the same time. I think the music they had was really neat. And also, I'm really glad that they had an actual death metal singer do it, step in, because I think it added a lot to the authenticity.
Gotcha. It's also worth, I'm very curious to see, I mean, if anyone if any of our listeners have actually like seen and heard both the dub and the sub versions, I'd like to know how they compare, because the writer and director of the actual show, I believe his name is Aggretsuko. He was the one who provided the voice for Aggretsuko when she's singing. He's the one who provides the voice in the Japanese sub. I'm curious to see if there's an actual difference between him and, an actual professional death metal artist. So let us know if what you think. Should they have gotten a professional from Japan to do it? Let us know. I
have to give the dubbers a lot of credit though for the fact that they brought in a guy to actually do the music and compose it. Usually, I've watched a lot of animes. They usually leave the music alone because sometimes they direct translate and it sounds bad, or they just leave it in Japanese, which is usually nice on their own. The fact they actually worked the lyrics around to have a death metal singer do that, I really appreciated that. I think it was a really it was a risky choice, but it was a very smart one.
I like that, actually. I didn't know that's what they had done, and I think that's really awesome though. For them to kind of take that route versus just either leaving the music alone, because that's true. They oftentimes will just leave music alone whenever they go from Japanese to English or whatever. And so it makes me curious now to listen or to watch one episode at least dubbed, just so I can hear it and see if there's it takes away from it in any way.
The voice actors they got for the dub were actually across the board really good, and they're all they're not just anime veterans as well. They're veterans of regular animation as well. Erica Mendez was Aggretsuko. She did a fantastic job. But the one name that stuck out in the dub, Haida, was voiced by Ben Diskin, who I know Justin, if he's listening, will remember as number 1 and 2 from Codename Kids Next Door.
What?
And also he was Eugene in Hey Arnold.
No way. Oh, now okay, I'm gonna watch the first episode now, dubbed. So but I really want to hear it. It's so, I had to look it up, and I looked him up and I was like, oh my God, he sounds so incredibly different. He's an adult now. Oh gosh.
Okay, seriously, last question, because we do have to wrap up. What are the chances of there being a concert of Aggretsuko, and you have someone who's in full Aggretsuko gear, super dressed as Aggretsuko, and then just singing super heavy death metal songs? And what are the chances? I feel if there's a Hatsune Miku, I think we can make this happen. I think it's a safe bet if it's not already something that is in the works.
It is very likely in Japan. It's very likely in Japan, extremely.
It's Japan. It's probably already done by now. We just haven't heard of it yet.
We just haven't Googled it.
I don't know. I just think that it would be really cool if if you have the person in full Aggretsuko gear, remove you get different singers from different heavy metal bands to perform once, and one each night or whatever of say this pseudo concert that I'm making up in my head. And then you can have them remove the Aggretsuko face and then be surprise, it's me. It's me from this band. I don't know. I think that there could be a very entertaining kind of show created from that. So whoever's in charge, just contact me. You know where to find me.
We'll help organize it.
Yeah, exactly. Just let me do it. So find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. Join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. Support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Kent, aka Kent Brockman. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Andy, and Hugh. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Rock on.